Ji, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The topic of our today's lecture is nanotechnology and cardiovascular diseases. So, besides the application of nanotechnology in a number of areas, nanotechnology also finds its way to be applied in the healthcare system. And in healthcare system, nanomaterials could be used to formulate various nanomedicines. So, first of all, I'm going to discuss what is a nanomedicine. Nanomedicine is actually the application of nanoscale tools and machines to diagnose and to cure diseases, deliver drugs, and repair damaged tissues. So that means nanomaterials could be used in healthcare system as tools to diagnose the human diseases as well as drugs to treat the human diseases, and also they could be used as drug delivery agents in order to efficiently deliver the drugs to the targeted areas. And at the same time, nanomaterials could also be used as efficient agents in order to repair the damaged tissues in in case of various human diseases. So our today's lecture is specifically linked to the cardiovascular diseases, how nanotechnology have specific applications in the diagnosis, in the cure of the cardiovascular diseases. So first of all, we could discuss little bit about the cardiovascular diseases. So cardiovascular diseases are the most frequent cause of deaths around the world. So number one cause of deaths around the world are the cardiovascular diseases. And only in USA, 1.5 million heart attacks are counted annually. So this is a huge number of deaths that could be caused by the heart attacks only in USA. So you can count how severe this disease is around the world. So this implies the importance of these cardiovascular diseases in terms of the diagnosis and treatment of this disease by using whatever the means available. And if you look at the causes of the cardiovascular diseases, so you see that although there are a number of causes of the cardiovascular diseases, but specifically discussing, we can talk about two most widely known causes of the cardiovascular diseases. Number one, blockage of arteries due to the formation of plaques. So in cardiovascular diseases, what happens that in our blood circulation system, our blood vessels or arteries are blocked due to the formation of plaques. So plaques are actually the tissues the tissues that are formed due to the buildup of the cholesterol or the buildup of the fatty acids in the blood circulation system. And these are very dangerous. Once these plaques have been developed in the blood circulation system, what happens that the circulation of the blood is hindered or stopped, and there are a huge chances of development of the heart attack or the development or even the stroke as well. So this is the number one cause of the development of cardiovascular diseases. Then another cause is the formation of blood clots. So blood clots may also be formed in the blood circulation systems in human beings anywhere in the body. And what happens is that once these blood clots are developed in blood system, so these blood clots would hinder the circulation of the blood. And due to this hindrance, what happens that this ultimately lead to the development of the heart attack or even a stroke. So cardiovascular diseases development is largely linked to these two causes. And these two causes cause the hindrance in the circulation of oxygen carrying blood in the body. And that lead towards the ultimately towards the death by the heart attack or stroke. So we have to now utilize we utilize various means in order to treat, in order to diagnose the cardiovascular diseases. And our topic of discussion is nanomaterials. How nanomaterials could be used in order to diagnose, in order to treat, and in order to repair the tissues that have been ruptured due to the cardiovascular diseases. So first of all, we are going to discuss the use of nanomaterials as diagnostic tools. How nanomaterials could be used as diagnostic tools in order to diagnose specifically the cardiovascular diseases or the plaques that are developed in the blood circulation system. So in the diagnosis of the cardiovascular diseases, we can use nanomaterials, we can use various nanomaterials as nanoscale probes. So probes are actually those materials, those molecules that specifically target, that specifically detect a specific point in a lot. So you are well aware of the DNA probes. So what are the DNA probes? DNA probes are actually the single stranded DNA molecules that specifically bind to specific DNA molecules in a pool of DNA, right? And we detect a specific DNA molecule. So that is a DNA probe. So similarly, we can use nanoscale probes as well. So nanoscale probes are used in order to specifically detect the cells, in order to specifically detect the genes, in order to specifically detect the those fatty acids or the fatty acid buildups that are developed in the blood circulation system, so that these cardiovascular diseases could be diagnosed. So in these nanoscale probes, first is the molecular beacon. So molecular beacon is a probe material that is at nanometer scale, and its size is 3 to 5 nanometer, right? Its size is 3 to 5 nanometer. So what this molecular beacon does is, first of all, I'm going to discuss the shape of the molecular beacon. So molecular beacon, shape of the molecular beacon is like this picture. If you look at this picture, you can see the shape of the molecular beacon. So it's wider at the ending portion, and it's relatively thinner at the starting portion. So it's a hairpin-like structure. A hairpin-like structure is a molecular beacon. So what this molecular beacon does is, this is a nanoscale material. Once it's used as a probe, it can specifically detect those genes that are linked towards the development of cardiovascular diseases. So out of the gene pool of the human cells, and you are well aware of the fact that in the human cells, there are a huge number of genes that are linked to various traits, various phenotypic traits, and it is estimated that in human cells, around 25,000 to 35,000 genes are working that are responsible for various traits in the human cells, right? So out of these thousands of genes that exist in the genome of the human cells, so molecular beacons specifically detect those genes that are responsible for the development of the cardiovascular diseases. So we can diagnose, we can detect those genetic markers or genetic fragments that ultimately leads to the development of cardiovascular diseases by using these molecular beacons. Then number two, another type of probe could be used as a diagnostic tool to diagnose the cardiovascular diseases, and that is called as semiconductor quantum dots. So first of all, we can discuss what is a semiconductor, and you might have aware about the semiconductors. So semiconductors are actually those materials that actually exist in between the conductors and the insulators. So those materials that exist the in between conductors and insulators, they are called as the semiconductors. So quantum dots, we have already discussed about the quantum dots in previous lectures. So you are well aware about the quantum dot. These are the nanoscale particles whose optical properties are very promising. And we can use the optical properties of these quantum dots in order to apply these quantum dots in variety of applications. So semiconductor quantum dots are those nanomaterials that could be used as nanoprobes in order to diagnose the cardiovascular diseases. So what they do is, if you look at this picture here, these are the semiconductor quantum dots, right? They have a very promising optical properties. I mean, they could produce various colors once the light is passed through them. So this property of the quantum dots could be utilized in the diagnostic in the disease diagnostics. So what they do is, once the semiconductor quantum dots are released into the blood stream, they specifically reach to to those areas where the cholesterol plaques are developed in the blood circulation system. So once they reach that area, they specifically bind to the uh, to the to the plaques, and once they bind, we can easily get the signal from these semiconductor quantum dots. So once the signal is produced, it means we can diagnose the plaques that are present in the blood arteries. Then another type of nanoscale probes that could be used as diagnostic tools in order to detect the cardiovascular diseases, they are called as magnetic nanoparticles. So we have discussed about the magnetic nanoparticles a number of times, and you are well aware of the properties of the magnetic nanoparticles. So magnetic nanoparticles are those nanoparticles that have a magnetic effect, right? So if you look at this picture here, you see that this is a magnetic nanoparticle. So a magnetic nanoparticle is of the property that it has a magnetic core here. Its core is magnetic. For example, iron nanoparticle, for example, cobalt nanoparticle, for example, nickel nanoparticles. All of these are the magnetic nanoparticles. So it has a magnetic core, and out of the core, there are some functional groups. And these functional groups are responsible for the functionality of these magnetic nanoparticles. So what these magnetic nanoparticles do in cardiovascular disease diagnostics is that once they are released in the arteries, or once they are released in the blood circulation system, what they do is they specifically bind to the cells of the plaques, right? They specifically bind to the surfaces of the cells of the plaques. So once they are bound to the surfaces of the cells, due to their magnetic effect, ultimately they produce the signal outside, and we can easily diagnose the development of the plaques in the blood circulation system. So this is how we can use various nanomaterials as probes in the diagnosis of the cardiovascular diseases. Then number two, we can as we can use the nanomaterials in the diagnosis of the cardiovascular diseases, at the same time we can also use these nanomaterials in the treatment of the cardiovascular diseases. So we can directly use these nanomaterials as drugs in the treatment of the cardiovascular diseases. So how these nanomaterial act as the drugs? So what we can do is we can use nanoparticle based breakage of the blood clots. So we can break these blood clots in the arteries or in the blood vessels by using various nanoparticles. So how they break the blood clots? They actually dissolve the fibrin that is present in blood clots. Actually, blood clots in blood circulation system of the human beings are formed by a protein that is called as fibrin protein. So what these nanoparticles do is they actually dissolve this fibrin. So once this fibrin is dissolved, the clots are then broken down. And once the clots are broken down, it means that the blood circulation system would be opened, and blood can easily flow in the blood circulation system. So this is how nanoparticles could be directly used as drugs in order to treat the cardiovascular diseases. Then, number two, nanomaterials are also used as nanolipoblockers. So what are these nanolipoblockers? Nanolipoblockers actually, they prevent the development of the cardiovascular diseases. What they do is, uh, once the uh, once the clot is developed, it means that now we have to break this clot by using some specific drugs. Then another treatment strategy is to prevent the development of the blocks, to prevent the development of the blood clots. And this is done by the nanolipoblockers. They are the drugs that actually prevent the development of the cholesterol plaques that are developed in the blood circulation system. So we can use both of these treatment strategies by using various nanomaterials. We can dissolve the clots or the plaques, and at the same time we can also prevent the formation of the clots and the plaques in the blood circulation system by using various nanomaterials. Then, number third, we can also use nanomaterials in the repair of the damaged tissues. So there are chances that in cardiovascular diseases, there is a damage of the tissues. And once the tissues are damaged, once the arteries are leaked, they are ruptured. So there are chances of the heart attacks, or there are chances of the strokes. So we can also use nanotechnology in this area in order to repair the tissues. And you are well aware of this term, the stents. And you know that the physicians or the doctors, they often use stents, and they place the stents in the blood vessels in order to uh, in order to uh, remove the blockage of the blood. So these stents are actually made up of two materials. Number one, metal. So there are metal stents, and number two, plastic stents. So we can use metal stents and plastic stents in order to be placed in the blood system, in order to remove the blockage of the system. So there are certain problems that are associated with the stunts. And what are those problems? Then in the next step, we will discuss the solution. We will discuss the nano-based solution. So first, we are going to discuss the problems that are associated with the stunts. So what are those problems? Number one, infection. Once these stunts are placed in the arteries or the blood system, they can cause infection. So this is a problem. Number two, they can also lead to the development of blood clots, right? So this is also another problem. So we are we use these stunts in order to open up the blood system, and if they are going to develop the blood clots, then this means that they are also leading towards the development of another problem, right? So number three, they can also cause bleeding. So once the stent is placed, and there are chances that bleeding may happen, and that ultimately lead to the secondary problems as well. So this is another problem. And number four, they might lead to development of the scar tissues. So what are the scar tissues? These are the fibrous tissues that could develop in the arteries or in the blood vessels. So we are placing the stents in order to remove the blockage of the blood. And if the scar is developed again, then what happens, that there would again be a blockage of the blood flow, and oxygen carrying blood would be blocked down, and there would be a chances of the heart attack or the stroke. So these scars might develop due to the activation of the immune system. And you are aware of the fact that once the foreign body is entered into the human cells, what happens, that number one step that human cells respond to these foreign body is the activation of the immune system. So uh, the number one response is the immune system activation. So suddenly immune system is activated. So because these stunts are also the foreign bodies, and once they are placed in the arteries, our immune system can be activated, and that might lead towards the development of the scars, and that is associated with another problems. So these are some of the problems that are associated with the placement of the stunts once there is a damage of the tissues. Then nanomaterials could be used in this area. Nanomaterials could find some solutions, and they could be used. They could have a promising applications in the repair of the damaged tissues. So how this could happen? That number one, they can be used as nano thin coatings of the stunts. So in order to avoid all those problems that are associated with the placement of the stents in the blood system, so in order to avoid those problems, we can do a nano thin coating of the stents. So once this nano thin coating is done with these stunts, all those problems that could arise uh, by by using without coated stunts could be avoided. Number one. Number two, we can also use the development of nanomaterial based stunts. So nanomaterial based stunts would be more beneficial as compared to the metal based stunts, or as compared to the plastic based stunts, and it is thought that that would avoid all those problems, and the scar development, the infection, or the bleeding that that uh, uh, that is associated with the metal or plastic stunts. So this is how nanotechnology could help in the repair of the damaged tissue in case of the cardiovascular diseases. So thank you so much. This is all about my lecture for today. And now if you have any question about today's lecture, you can